Hey everyone, it is Jonathan, and it is July 21st, 2015, and I have some cool news for you. I actually went to the movies today, and I did not see the one I intended to see. I actually was going to see Ant-Man, but I decided to go see that later this week, maybe this weekend, hopefully. Instead today, what I saw was Terminator Genisys, as I'm sure you can tell by the video's title and the description, all that happy, wonderful stuff. I decided to go ahead and do this before I did the video about, well, what I had planned to do, explaining the differences between Marvel and DC, because, it's only been a few hours since I saw Terminator, and it's still, pretty fresh in my mind. Now, I know a lot of people have already seen it that aren't me, and you can find, you can find reviews and everything online about it. But I wanted, just to give my thoughts about it because it's actually a pretty decent movie. Um, as a standalone film, it's actually better, but that's for later. Fair warning: there will be spoilers with this, so don't get upset, and don't scream, "You've ruined the movie for me." Um, this is going to be spoilers. Anyway, the basic synopsis of the film is that it's 2027, I believe, and John Connor is leading the human resistance, and uh, he decides, if you're familiar with Terminator, you know who John Connor is. He's the son of Sarah Connor. His father is Kyle Reese, who in the future is actually his best friend. All of that is the same. None of that has actually changed. Um, John Connor is basically treated as a god. He's a prophet. He can predict the future. Um, they state in this version that Judgment Day was August 27th, 1997, which means that I would have had a horrible birthday because my birthday is August 28th. Um, anyway, this is 20 years after that, and it's taken apparently this long to, force Skynet to a position where they're about to be defeated. And they are launching an assault on a prison camp, essentially. And this prison camp is where Skynet has its absolute, final weapon. The final weapon, as it turns out, is actually sending the T-800 back to 1984 to find Sarah Connor and kill her, thus preventing John Connor from being born. Uh, Basically, what you're seeing in this is the events that presaged the 1984 movie. The original Terminator. You're seeing, what was taking place. Um, Whenever they get into where this, the actual time machine is, uh, Skynet actually shuts down. There were forces in Colorado that were able to defeat Skynet's central base operations there, and the humans win. Um, but you see, the time machine in the middle. They're standing around, and John Connor says, "Well, what I knew was going to happen." Turns out that they have to use the time machine because the Colorado forces actually winning uh, was something that Sarah Connor told him was going to happen. Because she's heard the future from Kyle Reese. She knows everything that's going to happen. So she has told John Connor what's going to happen, and John's predicting everything. So he realizes, we have to send someone back, and everyone says, I'll go. Of course, everyone loves John Connor. They want to go back and save Sarah Connor because they realize, ta-da! This is the end point for them. This is what they know what's about to happen. So John Connor looks at all of them, and and he says, you can't go, whatever. And Reese says, I'll go, and that I have to go. And John Connor says yes. Of course, you find out, oh, lo and behold, he has to be naked when he goes, blah, 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 blah. Well, when he gets in the time machine and it gets turned on, You see Matt Smith from Doctor Who actually come up behind John Connor and grip him around the mouth, and his hand goes red, and that's it. Um, During the time travel sequence, Reese actually develops some new memories, and those come into play later on. Anyway, what follows that is a series of events that are reshoots of scenes from the original Terminator movie. Um, the scene where the T-800 actually arrives and is naked and he's by the dump truck. That's there. Um, there is a scene, of course, where Reese arrives and he falls. That happens. The reason he falls, as it turns out, is because when the humans took over the time machine, they were not able to use it as accurately as I guess Skynet was. So the T-800, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, is actually kneeling when he lands, but Kyle Reese falls from the air. Uh, but when it teleports, it actually lifts, whatever's being sent up off the ground. Like I said, the human's accuracy is not that good apparently. So he falls a few feet. That's recreated. The hobo who he takes the pants from is there. There is a scene where he winds up in a store stealing clothing. That's there, as well as the scene of the T-800 walking up to the punks, who hassle him and pull the knife and everything. That's also there. Um, those sequences are entirely different, though. What's different is that the T-800, walks up to the punks, and you had the same original conversation. I need your clothes and everything, and he parrots their phrases. Um, what happens is the original T-800, Arnold Schwarzenegger's, shows up, and this is where things get, to steal a phrase from Doctor Who because it's actually relevant since Matt Smith is in this, wibbly wobbly timey wimey. Okay, now I realize that's David Tennant, and I'm sorry, but still, it's relevant. Um, Turns out, you find this out through a long, complicated series of events that actually involves Sarah Connor and the T-100, who is Schwarzenegger's the actual actor playing him, not the CGI face on the body double who's portraying the one that's sent back. This one is called Pops. So you have the T-800 and Pops. Okay, and just for safety's sake, I'll say Pops and Terminator from this point in time, so we all know understand what's going on. Okay, uh, Pops and uh, Sarah Connor rescue John Connor, who, as it turns out, is being chased by a police officer that is actually a T-1000. Now, if you've seen Terminator 2 Judgment Day, the T-1000 in there is in there. The same Terminator that is semi-solid liquid metal. This exact same one is there. It chases him, and that's when you see him going to the clothing store and so on. Anyway, back to what I was saying. They explained to John Connor what happened. Well, a partial explanation. It's not till later that you find out that Sarah Connor, her father and mother were killed by the T-1000. The one that you see in this movie, I believe. I'm not quite certain. But the Pops is who shows up and who saves her, and he kills the T-1000 and then carries her off. And she was 9 years old when this happened. This was in the late 60s or so, late 60s or 70s. So she grows up knowing what's going to happen. She's been raised by Pops the entire time. Okay, Pops has taught her how to shoot. He's taught her how to punch. Like, he's done all the fighting training Sarah Connor ever needs to know. So by the time that Reese gets there, he finds out, oh, this is apparently something different time-wise. They go through, a rather long sequence of fighting the T-1000 the T-1000 actually resurrects the Terminator, the T-800 Terminator, after it had been, forced offline. It actually does it by dripping a portion of itself into it and taking over its brain. So it comes back up, and John Connor fights it, and he kills it eventually by blowing its head off. Okay, uh, this was all planned. Believe it or not, it was all planned by Sarah and Pops. They're actually in their little underground base where they have built their own time machine, and their plan is to go to 1997 and stop the events of Judgment Day there. Well, Kyle Reese, because of his new memories, that he learned coming back to '84, says that they can't go there. They have to go to 2017, which is when he himself was, I believe, 10 or 12, somewhere around there. And he remembers seeing it's basically an iPad. It's not said in there what it is, but it's hinted at being an iPad, a device that says Genisys, and it has the countdown on it. And the version of himself from there tells him Genisys is Skynet, and that he has to remember this. Okay? And apparently what's happened is because Sarah and Pops disrupted the timeline, because Pops comes back. It's unknown who actually sends him back to find 9-year-old Sarah. But at some point in time, like I said, he's come back, and now they've built a time machine to go to the future, and they changed things up. Somewhere along the line, something was changed up. The Skynet was aware of this, and Skynet decides to fix this by introducing an operating system that will combine smartphones and pads and laptops and desktops, cars, TVs. Like, it will be one operating system for everything, and it's so fantastic, and the world's going to adopt it. It's actually so fantastic that the military of the United States and every government around the world is going to just adopt it, because it's amazing. Okay, and that's what Genisys is. Reese convinces them to go to 2017. 2 years from now, like our actual now. 2 years from now, and they show up in a freeway. They get arrested, and a long, complicated series of events later involving I forgot his name for a moment. J.K. Simmons. He shows up, and it turns out he was actually the police officer that tried to arrest Kyle Reese in 1984, the one who doesn't die in this movie. Yes, I forgot to mention that one of the police officers is killed by the T-1000. The other one, mysterious things happen to him. You don't see him. But he was actually that police officer. And he remembers Kyle Reese. He remembers Sarah Connor. And, of course, he remembers Pops. He helps them escape from the hospital where they're at, where Homeland Security was going to show up. But the Homeland Security representative was actually, surprise, John Connor. As it turns out, John Connor has actually come back from the future to find Sarah Connor. Now, of course, he has to prove that he's actually John Connor and not, a T-1000 or anything. So he tells her this story that no one else has ever heard. It's later found out, not very long after this, actually, when they are leaving the hospital itself, they're in the parking garage. That is when John accidentally calls Reese Dad. And Kyle Reese is like, what? Really? How can that be? He's confused. And the amusing part of this for me is that he's confused that John Connor is his son when he's been fighting sentient robots the entire time, and he's traveled through time. The most confusing thing for anything going on even though he's in a world he didn't ever get to know, because he was a little kid and he would only have certain memories of this. And even though he's been sent back to 1984, which is where he had absolutely no memories of, it's an entirely different world from when he was born. The most confusing thing for him is actually that he has a kid, and it's actually John Connor. And oh, look, he slept with Sarah Connor. It's a little strange. Anyway, Pop shows up and suddenly shoots John Connor, and there's this almost shootout between Pops and Sarah Connor, who is, Pops is holding a shotgun at John Connor, and Reese is holding a gun at Pops, and Sarah is holding a gun at Pops, and she tells him to put the gun down, so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. John Connor stands up, and surprise, he's actually a Terminator. He is a special kind of Terminator that was made out entirely of basically nanobots. Okay, and you find out from him that Matt Smith's character, the one who assaults him when Kyle Reese was going back in time initially, was actually Skynet itself. Skynet purposely infected John Connor, killed every human in the room, and then sends John Connor back to 2015 or so, giving him enough time to get into enough positions to make sure that he's able to code Skynet itself. Okay, and which is completely different from the original movie. What happens in the original movie? Actually, Terminator 2, somewhere around there, when the T-800 was destroyed, Cyberdyne Systems actually got a hold of its arm, and they reverse engineered the Terminator arm to actually build Skynet. They built their robots from that, and that just progressed on and on. In this reality, the son of the Cyberdyne engineer who actually reverse engineered the Terminator arm is who is running Cyberdyne now, and he's hired a programmer named John Connor. Of course, John Connor is not actually in Homeland Security. He faked the whole thing. Ta-da! But anyway, he hires John Connor as a programmer, and Cyberdyne is actually building their time machine. It's called a quantum interface, I believe, but they're actually building it in San Francisco. Okay, like I said, John was hired as a programmer, and he is overwhelmingly advanced computer science overnight. He was able to do such fantastic programming that Cyberdyne can now project holograms, and they're actually beginning work on the T-1000 series. They've entirely skipped building the T-800, basically. And the reason you know what's going on is there is a ring around the time travel machine that is actually the liquid metal that makes up the T-1000. And there are these robot arms that's electrifying it and pulling it up and making it into shape. So they're actually trying to produce T-1000s, or you're hinted they're doing it while they're building the time travel machine, which is basically saying Skynet's already building its own robot army, and it is completely skipping building the Terminator skeletons that will be inside the flesh, like the T-800s are in the original movie. Turns out that John Connor was not the original, or rather not the only Terminator that was made out of nanobots. Skynet actually captured several humans and tried to, I guess infect is the correct word, them with these nanobots. But it drove the humans insane, and they were not able to function. John Connor was the first one that was actually functionable. So he's kind of unique, and it's somewhat hinted at, just the way it's discussed, uh, that maybe, just maybe, the liquid metal around uh, the time travel device is actually uh, the humans being tested on. Now, it's never really confirmed as what it is, but it could be. You never know. Um, anyway, uh, Sarah and Reese and Pops all go to Pops' armory, which is in an old battery that's on the coast. Of course, it's had all the guns removed, but Pops has, over the years, put his own little armory in there. It's machine guns and bombs and duct tape, and surprise, he has pictures of Sarah Connor growing up. He even has her radio that she had, and it still works. And it's where it's hinted at that Pops has been around long enough. He's actually basically becoming a person. Um, you actually learn something very interesting about Pops, and then this is a good point to bring it up. Um, Throughout the movie, he repeatedly, well, he has this little back and forth with Kyle Reese, and he says, "I'm old, but I'm not obsolete." Okay, um, in 1984, when they stopped the T-1000, and in this version of the timeline, his skin on his right arm was burned off by acid because they actually melted the T-1000, and it was not enough to actually melt, his uh, metallic structure on the inside, but it burned off the skin. Um, so he told Sarah that he was not, of course, not going to the time travel machine because it uses a really strong magnetic force and it would rip him apart. So he says that he'll get there the natural way and he'll catch up. And uh, he says that it will take time for his skin to regrow. Well, you find out a little bit little after that the skin that's actually on the machine inside is of course alive. I mean, everyone who's ever watched Terminator knows that the skin is alive, like it's living. Uh, just so just so the Terminator can actually pass as being a person. But what you're never told is that it actually does age. It's alive, and it will regrow over time because the machine's able to regrow it. So from '84 to 2017, he of course regrows his arm and everything, and his hair actually gets grayer, and it becomes more of you seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger as he is now. Like you see him, 30 years ago, and you see him now in the movie, even though the 30 years ago was him CGI. Okay, it's actually pretty interesting to do this. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Um, Sarah finally realizes, Pops actually loves her, and they escape on a bus. John Connors, of course, has shown up, and they thought they blew him up trying to, be in Pops' armory, but they failed at that. So he follows them out, and they're on a bus. The police start chasing them, because it's a stolen bus, and they're driving down Golden Gate Bridge, and John Connor starts ripping apart the bus, and it goes over the edge, and Pops is there, and he has been thrown out of the bus by Connor, and he lands in a police car, chases them, grabs onto Sarah, Sarah grabs onto Reese, and he pulls them out of the bus. The police show up, and Pops looks around, and he says, "I am 14 rounds of getting us out of this." What he's saying is that it's pointless to be in a shootout because he would have to have 14 more rounds of ammunition, which is it's pretty interesting that he's still, calculating um, being able to, to take people out. So they get arrested, and they're at the police station, and J.K. Simmons' character is there listening to what Kyle Reese says. In the room with him is 12-year-old Kyle Reese. Surprise! And his parents. He found this Kyle Reese because earlier at the hospital, they had run fingerprints on him, and it showed up as being Kyle Reese. And Kyle Reese, the young one, got in trouble, and that was why they had his fingerprints, because he was sent, to one of those uh, scared straight type things. Okay, so they have his fingerprints. They have nothing on Sarah Connor, of course, and less than nothing on Pops, who does not say anything the entire time. Well, he finally hears J.K. Simmons' character, and of course she's, in front of a two-way mirror, and he stands up, looks directly at him, and that's when, lo and behold, one of the agents in the room is actually John Connor, and they fight to the police station, and they get in helicopters, and they fly through the city of San Francisco, and they land at Cyberdyne headquarters. What happens then is a long series of running shootouts, and there is, of course, a big timer on the wall saying that Genisys is about to launch, in a day and whatever. 23 hours, I think, at this point. Somewhere around there. Anyway, the holo projectors I mentioned earlier come on, and you see a little kid, and they say, you're not real, and so on. And then the kid ages, and then the clock goes down. What happens is Skynet is actually building itself. It's reprogramming itself faster and faster and faster and faster. And the more it's able to reprogram itself, the more it's able to actually create itself. It ages a little bit, like its visual avatar ages, and that actually lowers the time that it takes for it to come online. Well, they get down to around 4 minutes or so, and they're having this big battle with John Connor inside. They finally destroy him because they get onto the time machine that's being built at Cyberdyne, and they figured out at this point in time, that magnets will actually rip them apart. They discovered that in the hospital when they put him in an MRI machine, and it kind of started pulling the nanobots apart. Well, Pops has decided, he's going to just they have to find something to destabilize him. Well, they do, and he punches him in the chest, and he slams him on the thing, and he says that they're going to have to blow it up, of course, they have to. But he can't actually kill Sarah Connor, and John Connor can't kill her either. So it's left, of course, to Kyle Reese to blow everything up. It blows up, of course, and the head of Pops gets flung into the liquid metal, and he just melts, So Reese and Sarah are trapped in a little bunker type building, and of course, it takes a little bit to realize it, but where you're actually at in the Cyberdyne headquarters here in 2017 is actually the prison camp that they took over in the beginning of the movie. Okay, so they're in like a little bunker type thing, trying to figure out what's going on. The door blows open, and lo and behold, there's Pops. How was that even possible, you ask? He upgraded himself. Pops is now a fully functioning T-1000. Yay for time travel. Anyway, they've realized, of course, they have shut Skynet down, and Doomsday is, Judgment Day, rather, is never going to happen. And at the end of the movie, they go and find little Kyle Reese, and old Kyle Reese actually tells him something that he wants him to remember forever, and what it is that Genisys is Skynet, and that's basically the end of the movie. Now, I have a few problems with this now that I've told you the entire plot of it, and I probably should have brought up the points while I was doing that, but I thought it was important to get the basic plot out of the way. My problems are, one, Skynet is dumb. Skynet, for being a computer system that is self-aware, is self-programming, can reprogram itself to where it becomes a lot smarter and more functional. Something that can create uh, cyborgs and liquid metal and nanobots and can time travel is dumb as hell. Okay, uh, Skynet does not seem to understand. I mean, it's okay. First off, Skynet seems to have this reset button, and it just presses it every time something doesn't go its way. And that's basically what you have in the Terminator movie. Is Skynet hitting the reset button over and over and over and over again? So much so that this time Skynet realized, oh, by the way, the actual final version of Skynet was actually Matt Smith's character. Okay, so Matt Smith is Skynet apparently. Um, anyway, Skynet it fails at its job basically. And the reason it fails is because uh, a normal person looking at this, doesn't have to understand time travel or anything. They can just look at what's going on and say, all you have to do is go back to some point in time before Sarah Connor's mom, whoever she is, ever conceived her, and make sure she gets in a car accident, or do this or do that. Like there's 100 little things that could go wrong, and Skynet always seems to just be shy of that. Now, of course, you find out that Skynet tried to kill Sarah Connor when she was 9 and failed miserably at it, but managed to kill her parents. Why not go back before she was born? You know, solve your problem before it even becomes a problem. That's really what I'm getting at. Um, it's just a big plot hole that's in all the Terminator films, and I've never really understood that. I mean, now I realize you would not have a movie. You for sure would not have uh, the series of movies and even the TV show you've had about it. But Skynet could definitely solve that problem really quickly. Okay. Um, Another issue I had was obviously Kyle Reese not being able to accept that he's John Connor's dad. Now I realize that seems kind of silly, but John Connor told him everything. Okay, uh, Kyle Reese even states in the movie that you've told me so much about Sarah that I feel like I know her. Like I know her. Like I can find her. I can predict where she'll be. I know this. I know that. So on. But John Connor, even though he has the last name Connor, apparently it's never clicked with Reese or anyone else that Sarah Connor is his mom. Okay, even though I believe in the original movie, it's mentioned she's his mom. Uh, it just doesn't make a lot of sense that John Connor would tell him all these things and then it would just never come up at some point in time. I also have a problem with the fact that he's in the same universe with himself, and in most other time travel stories, if you interact with yourself or if you do anything, that alters, like the idea of stepping on a butterfly in the past will destroy something in the future. He interacts with himself. Um, Sarah Connor interacts with the younger version of him on 2 occasions. It's just strange to me that uh, this somehow has never affected the future because the memories that Kyle Reese develops are actually of this. He remembers being told by Sarah Connor, go in a straight line, Kyle, and run away when he was a kid, when they were escaping the police station. It's just little things that don't seem to add up, and it's really big continuity errors. Um, But the movie by itself is actually pretty good. It has a lot of moments in there where they have a lot of jokes. Uh, Pretty humorous, and to see Arnold Schwarzenegger, reprise this role after 30 some odd years and still be able to handle it, and still be able to be an action star is actually quite nice. I really enjoyed Emilia Clarke in this movie. Now, granted, I'm a Game of Thrones fan. I like her in that. I think she's adorable. I think she's a wonderful actress, but she's really good in this. She does a very good version of um, Sarah Connor. um, I really, really, really enjoyed the effects in this. There were a lot of nods to the previous movie. Like I mentioned earlier, the same shots from the '84 version that were redone for this are there. There is a point in time where the T-1000 is trying to get into the vehicle that Sarah and Reese and Pops are in, and it actually makes those same hook hands that the T-1000 in Terminator 2 used to open the elevator doors. Like, it makes the exact same hand shapes. It uses, the swords. It cannot, of course, turn into anything that has moving parts, but it's advanced enough that it can drop pieces of itself off. Okay, when their vehicle escaped the store and it was chasing it, it flings a piece of itself onto the vehicle and it hangs on there. Well, Pops eventually realizes it's there, shoots it off. T-1000 drives up in a police car, just drags its hand on the street, and picks it back up. It's interesting to see the differences in T-1000 then and T-1000 now. I mean, you're talking about the same, kind of uh, machine, but just the advances in CGI between, when this came out and now. There is a fantastic scene when they're actually ripping apart the John Connor Terminator in the MRI. The actor, is walking forward. Uh, what's his name? Uh, Jason Clarke. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of his name for some reason. Jason Clarke is actually walking forward away from the MRI machine, and it's being turned up almost to as high as it'll go. So so the magnetic field is really, really strong. And it's actually pulling him back, and every step kind of, is staggered. So you see him kind of raise up and stop, because he's struggling against it. And each point in time where he stopped, there's a it's an outline, like it's just a version of him that was there, and he'll take a step and he'll stop, and that'll leave just kind of a little thin layer of nanobots there, and he'll walk forward. It's a beautifully done shot, uh, but it's actually a good movie. And if you have never seen any other Terminator film, this is a really good place to start because it references the original one, but if you've seen the other movies, who these people are. Like, you recognize the names, and you can figure out it's not so predictable that you can know everything. I thought through the movie, uh, what was going to have to happen is that John Connor was going to have to merge, the Terminator version of him was going to have to actually merge with the Skynet programming, in some way, and actually make it happen. But no, I was quite surprised to find out that he's actually programmed it. Um, the entire time I was actually watching Matt Smith initially, when you first see him show up, I had no idea he was going to represent Skynet. And I was, screaming in the theater, there's people around me, of course. And I was laughing, and I said, you have the doctor right there. Have him get in the TARDIS and have him go back in time. Use the Time Lord. He's your best asset for this. Come on. But of course, Matt Smith turns out to be the villain, and he's really good. And he didn't have a lot of roles, but lines, but he's really good at this particular role. Anyway, if I had to give it, 1 through 10, I would say 7 or 8. I'm really bad at grading movies, but it's actually really good. I enjoyed it. It's really worth going to see, honestly. So if you get a chance to go see it, go see it. If you want to wait till it's out on pay per view or it's on HBO, Showtime, whatever, wait till then, or get it on DVD, or even if you wait long enough, it's on Netflix. Get it. It's worth watching. It has some really decent CGI scenes in there, and if you are a pop culture nut or you're a fan of the Terminator series itself, you'll get all the references in there, and you'll just giggle like I'm assuming you'll giggle like I did. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it's actually really good. It's worth watching. So give Terminator Genisys your money. Go see it. Anyway, that's going to be it for this review. I'll have the Marvel versus DC discussion up some point in time. The Friday show is coming up soon. Danny will be back next week. This week it'll just be myself and Nick. I'm not yet ready to actually give out the subject yet, but keep an eye on the Facebook page. I'll announce it soon-ish. Anyway, the review of Ant-Man's coming up as soon as I go see it, and I think that's going to be it. And of course, I have to end this the only way that I possibly can. I absolutely have to say, the number one coded line from Terminator to say goodbye. So, actually, before that, bye-bye. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and always remember, I'll be back.